Welcome to Getting Ghosted. This is an Intuitive Soul Collective podcast, and I'm your host, Allie Horner. Welcome back, everyone. I'm excited to be back. I am feeling a lot better, have gotten my energy up into a much better place, and hopefully my voice is a little less froggy. I might know that the last two episodes, I recorded them both in one day when I was really coming down with a pretty nasty bug. And truth be told, I've had some issues with just being, fighting off a respiratory thing on and off over the last 6 weeks where I would have a week or two where I felt great. And then all of a sudden I would feel like dog do again and get hit with another thing. So I am feeling much, 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 much better. And just wanted to say thank you all so much for coming and listening to that episode. I got a ton of people who had a lot of positive feedback about it. They were like, oh my gosh, more. And I was like, okay, well, when I have more, I will channel more. So right now, though, I think a lot of what was coming out of the previous episodes too is how important it is for us in this time period and in 2025 to be conscious creators and conscious co-creators with the world around us, with the universe, because we cannot continue to be in me mode, or we will continue to stay where we are as a society. And I think we have been seeing the repercussions of that. And a lot of people are really watching a lot of things going on that are a little bit difficult or frustrating to see. And we're going to continue to see that if we continue. So, as I said, the name of the game this year is going to be Consciously Co-Creating, and my spiritual guides have been really, really reinforcing that now is the time. And so I began teaching stuff like this quite a ways back, and they keep saying there's no time like the present. And so in my Patreon group this week, shameless plug, we are going to be doing Manifest Fest. And it's not just about manifesting for yourself, but also working consciously with how we impact others. And so it's going to be a great little 5-day mini lesson thing that's included in the group. And you only have to join, I think it's like the $11 a month tier group to get in on the fun. So, but it's going to have some great mini lessons and channeled wisdom from my guides, as well as some exercises and different things that you can try in order to help you move up in terms of levels of consciousness of manifesting. And it's also going to explain why some of our manifesting doesn't work and how we get out of me mode and into we mode, because in 2025 and beyond, it is absolutely that age of Aquarius, conscious collective creation. We're going to go beyond what it means to create things that are just at lower level energy, which quite frankly is always rooted in fear and separation. And we're going to learn how to elevate out of that and into more connectivity, collectivity, collaboration, and love and higher wisdom. And also, it's not just about what you're creating and drawing to yourself. It's actually more and more about accessing the divine intelligence and kind of tuning into that universal wisdom and learning to work with higher consciousness energy to create things that are higher and better. And so as you move up these vibrational scale, you will find that there's a lot of really cool things happening. Your intuition starts to light up and turn on. You start to feel much more comfortable and at ease throughout your day to day. Your anxiety starts to wash away more and more. You start to feel like you're lighter, like you have a little more bounce in your step. Your creativity lights up. You start to feel a lot more resilient, though you don't really necessarily need to feel resilient, because as things happen, you are constantly in the energy of solutions and in the energy of creativity. So even if something happens that's upsetting or frustrating, it's like you don't stay in that as long. And it's not like you're blindly optimistic, right? So it's not about spiritually bypassing your feelings. It's more so that you see your feelings as fuel, and you're not hanging out in those lower tiers of feelings as long, because you're just allowing them to pass and move through you, because you start to literally shift your consciousness and your dimensional reality. And so when people are talking about like, oh, the shift to 5D, this is what they're talking about. And I just wanted to make it a little bit more understandable and tangible for everyone and not sound so out there. So, but if you're here, you're probably a little out there already. So you're probably going to be cool with it. So, yeah, it's going to be really fun. And so I am bringing in my guides because they want to talk about this a little bit more today. And I think that they're going to have some interesting things to say. Just keep in mind, I really never know what I'm going to end up channeling until I'm in it. And so, and that's when I find that that's how I find that I get the best information, is because I have to move my thoughts, my beliefs in my mind out of the way and just let them come in. So sometimes I'm surprised even by what they have to say. So I've got Eric stepping in, I've got Grace here, and then I've got my crew, my woo crew here, our spiritual power posse, my spirit squad, the A-team, as I used to call them. They're all here and they're ready to channel with you. And Eric is rubbing his hands together, and they're showing like clapping and cheering and applauding, and he's like holding his hands up like, okay, cool, like cool, thanks guys. So they're just kind of jokingly like welcoming him in. And then I also have Sam stepping in as well. So I've got quite a few of the woo crew over here. And so, as you know, over here in the words of Jamie Butler and her group, woo woo is true. So when we call it woo crew, it's in a positive mindset type of way. So now we've got them coming in. And so Eric and Sam are stepping forward and they're saying tag team back again because they're working together in tandem. And so what they're beginning to bring through is that everything is divinely co-created. And they're saying, so in higher consciousness, you begin to see the beauty of all things and all beings, and that's where that lightness really comes from. And they're showing me how important this is, and how they said like this is really like what you know intrinsically. This is what the soul and the spirit actually is. It's actually pure light. And they said, and now this isn't like a light and a dark, like a shadow and like light, or a judgment type of dark and light, though a lot of people interpret it that way. It's actually much more like the essence of all beings and all things is just pure consciousness. And so they're saying it doesn't actually carry any density at all, though we come here for experience. And so we perceive that we are dense, and we are, and he's like, get it, like dense, and he's tapping on his temple, and he's like just joking, but it actually shows up in how you think. And so he's saying, but it actually has more to do with molecules and atoms and holding physical matter together. So when you're trying to manifest in a denser, like a 3D, and they're like, with space and time, right? They're like, or the perception of space and time, what happens is that you're kind of in this denser energy. So it gets harder to co-create things that you want to manifest. And they said, now a lot of people are going to be slipping dimensions, and they're going to be zooming up into 4D and 5D and coming back in and out. And he said, a lot of people, they're going like, a lot of people already do this. They just aren't always aware, or other people aren't always aware that they're doing it. But those people feel different. And so not just to themselves, but other people are like, this person's energy feels really different, or I just have a different feeling around them. Sometimes they might say like, oh, I just feel really good about this person. And it's because they exist in a slightly different dimensional reality. And so, and they're showing like people walking in and out of dimensions. And they said, truth be told, many of you guys do this like millions of times per day, like you're switching back and forth all the time. And they said, and you can even consciously like play with the different levels of intention, emotion, and thought. And they said, really everything is just a manifestation. So even if you have certain thoughts, you're the receiver of them. So that can help you start to separate out like, is this mine? Is this something I want to keep thinking or picking up, because then I'm going to manifest along it. Now, I was asking them like, what's the purpose then, according to you guys, which I've talked to them before about this, but for the sake of bringing it forward to everyone, I said, what's the purpose then of being in the lower dimensions? And they said, well, if you want to be a conscious co-creator, you can't let your thoughts manifest on the spot, right? And they're saying, because a lot of you guys haven't cleaned a lot of that up yet, especially on a collective level. So you wouldn't want to have instantaneous manifestation, because think about how many more negative thoughts you have per day, or fearful thoughts you have per day, compared to positive thoughts. And I was like, yep, I get it. Because then we would be instantly manifesting all of these negative things like immediately. And they said, so what you have with lower vibration or lower density is the gift of time. And they said, we know now time, they're showing it like expanding and contracting. And they said, this is really it's kind of like the saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. When you begin to rise in frequency, everything gets lighter and brighter. You actually start to lose your taste for food. And you start to notice like you're not as focused on all of the physical forms of things because you have less judgment over things because you're not holding that energy of judgment anymore. You start to notice that you're rising into more and more ease and grace and the realms of love. And so your intent gets a lot higher and you stop holding denser thoughts and denser realities that are more based in fear or shame, lack, judgment, and control. And they're showing me that a lot of these things, they're based in the thought process of separation, which really they said is not a judgment. Again, it's more about the dimensional reality and time and space. It's more of a physics thing. And they're like, we want you to understand when we're talking about this, we're not talking about it in terms of judging yourselves. And they're saying, we know some of you are going to feel judgmental about yourselves or might be like, oh man, I'm doing this and that. And they said, no, that's not the point of what we're saying. We're more so talking about how it manifests on earth from a physics perspective. And so they're showing me, they're like, let go of any of that shame and just kind of like, or any negative feelings that you're like holding and just say, okay, so I feel that. So what? It's just a feeling, people feel shame. So what of it? People feel sadness. So what of it? And they said the less judgment you hold over an emotion, the less it's going to linger. And that's what you want because you don't want that sitting in your body. And they said, and that's what can help can help you kind of shift dimensions as well. And they said that's just one of many things to remember. Now, when we're manifesting in that lower density, they said you get a lot of strife and a lot of struggle, like, and it's like, yeah. And they said, now when you start to move up the scale, you can start to have more and more things going on that are really interesting and really cool because it becomes a little bit more intentional. But they're showing me like people, before you get to the point where it's a little more intuitive and magical, they said there's a lot of controlling and forcing and pushing. So in these lower vibrations, you believe that like, if you want it, got to make it happen. And that everything is about effort. Everything is about doing an action. But when you're in that energy, you're not accessing higher intelligence or creativity to like higher intelligence and creativity. They're showing it's always trying to get through, but it's kind of like putting a cork in a bottle. Like it's right there. It's waiting. It's trying to get out. It's trying to get through, but it can't because you've got the cork in the bottle. And so they're saying like, once you take the cork out, you start to move past the pushing and forcing and efforting and controlling. And they're saying like you start to shift the way you think about the amount of time you have and how much effort things take. And so they're showing a dimensional shift that begins to happen where the person's, they're showing their senses heightening and strengthening after they move out of that energy. But they're like, but if you really have a lot of force and control and you're really like, they're like regimented, like really regimented, and you're really strict, like you have a lot of like, it's got to be this way or the highway. And I have to, if I want this, I have to do that. They're like, when you're like that, you're excluding a whole lot of possibility because they're showing someone with like horse blinders on, and they're saying like your focus is really narrow. And that's because you're in, your decisions are more fear-based. You may have aspiration or ambition. So this is an okay energy to be in, but it often is kind of misguided. And they're also showing when a lot of people are in this, a lot of their goals and plans and judgments and what they believe they need to be reaching for or creating. It's not that they don't think that they can do it. It's more that it takes a lot more time. And when they get those things that they think they want, they tend not to be very happy about it. Like they're like, imagine the person that like they finally get to where they want to go and it's not good enough. They have to have more. Right. And they're like, we see this with people with like money where they're just like, oh, if I just had $6,000, or if I just had $1 million, if I just had, and it's like, no, you're going to get there and it's never going to be good enough. Or the way you get there is going to burn you out. There's always going to be something that's off about it. Or like they're showing me people who try to consciously create money and then they lose it all. like in the lottery, or they're showing people who are like trying to manifest a boyfriend or a girlfriend or whatever. And they're like, oh, don't even get me started on the love thing here. And they were like, a lot of you guys really, really think, because you've been really heavily conditioned by your society and your culture and or family systems, friends, what you see. They're like a lot of stuff you see on TV, media, streaming services, songs, like they're like, think about all the song lyrics, think about all the, like, they're like, man, like Eric's going, I love a good country song, right? I love the tune. And he goes, but man, some of those lyrics, y'all, they got you stuck. Like you're like, and they're showing low vibration because it's all like, whoa is me. And they're like, but really like the intent is beautiful. It's a release of passion and emotion, but we want you to know you can have passion and emotion that sings a lot higher and isn't about loss and, whoa, I never had this, or, oh, my lover left me. And they're like, more, like, think about it. The more you're reading and watching and doing things like that, the more you're going to co-create it or see it out in your world, because it becomes normalized. And they're like, it's not necessarily bad to like see things normalized, because it allows us all to feel connected in the human experience. And at the same time, then we don't look beyond it. So we got to look beyond it and say, is there better out there? Probably. And so they're saying, but this is the human part of the human deal. So they're showing me people trying to manifest boyfriends or girlfriends though. And it's like, they focus on everything they want. And they're like, even some of you guys who are doing like affirmations, or you're doing your shadow work, you know, and you're dealing with all your stuff and you're dealing with your attachment traumas and you're making lists of what you really want and you're doing your internal work. Well, when you're on that journey, a lot of times what happens is you get someone who looks great on paper, but then you find out they're a liar and a half, or you're so focused on not attracting something you've had before that was really bad, like someone who was married when you met them and they lied about it, or they like had some other like really, really, you know, maybe they had something else crazy going on that you were like, oh, I don't want to experience that ever again. As long as I don't experience that, I'll be happy. So then you get someone else that doesn't have that thing, but they sure should have something else going on that's not fun to deal with. And they keep saying, but to you in your mind, you don't realize that there's actually other experiences out there and other people out there where you don't have to deal with that. And so they're saying part of it in this like kind of consciousness, and what happens for a lot of people is they have a lot of misguided manifesting. And they're saying, and a lot of people actually like aim for things that they don't even really want, because they haven't thought about there being actually something different out there. And they've had a lot of conditioning from society, in the culture, their family, their friends, the media, etc. So they don't even realize that there are other things to reach for or ask for. And they're showing me people who travel and how differently they see the world, because they have gone to other cultures and they're like, holy shit, like, wow, there are cultures and there are other ways of being and thinking and doing things. There are other things that we can aim for to feel or to experience in our lives that we don't even think about as a possibility. Like it doesn't even come to mind because we don't see it or hear about it on a daily basis. And they're showing me like American culture and how we kind of exist in a vacuum a lot of the time. And they were showing like it takes a lot of intention and being really willing to go and see other places and stay open-minded. And then they're also saying like but we're seeing right now with the big consciousness shift, how people can talk across nations and share information and find stuff. They're showing me the old concept of pen pals, but they're like, but now you guys are able to do it across social media, but then they change your social media so that you can't access it as much anymore. And you have to intentionally look for it. But a lot of people don't even know, gee, I should be looking for this. And so, like they're showing me when everyone joined, Red Note and, during that like little period of time where we thought TikTok would be banned, which still could happen, but they were like, you know, so many people had their eyes opened up so quickly. And this was really important because it changes your consciousness and it changes what you understand to be the truth. So it changes your beliefs, it changes your values. It opens your eyes up to completely different things. And one of the things I actually did is I went on Red Note and I started asking them, different people on there, like, hey, you know, I'm just curious, what do you guys think about astrology? How is it used? The answers were fascinating because they matched a lot of what my guides were saying. And it was like, I finally had confirmation on it. But basically, a lot of people were like, yeah, we don't do it the same way as Americans. We don't understand why they're interpreting things the way they are. And I was like, holy shit, this just proves my point of like, I've always said like with astrology, I find that there are a lot of very interesting interpretations in America. I do believe in collective consciousness though. So I believe that the more people who believe it, they will act it out and they will see evidence of it, because one of the primary rules of manifesting and of being on earth is what you believe you will perceive. And so perception is 9/10 of the law. And that they're saying like, yes, like that's where dimensional shifts come from. And so when people have a specific belief system, they will interpret everything to match it. They have to be almost put in a completely new environment and taken out of that belief. So like out of their left brain and put somewhere new where their right brain has to activate, because they're more spontaneous and on the spot, and they're in a whole new realm and they're in a whole new world in order to be that open-minded. And so when we went on there and it's like, whoa, this is totally different. And this isn't even travel. It's just being on a different app, like created by people in China who have a completely different cultural system and set of beliefs and everything. And it was just so interesting to find that there were completely different answers and completely different ways of living, which you would suspect. But I think a lot of us have no idea how different and no idea how aligned we might be to other ways of thinking or being. But we're just not connected to them or not exposed to them. And we are also so set in our ways. And this could be true of other countries as well, that they might not be open to us, or we might not be even thinking to ask questions. So they go, yes, like my guys are like, yes, we want to talk about this. So when we're not open to new things or we don't know, so then we focus on creating things that are only what we know. So even the questions we might ask the universe, like, how can I have this? How can I create that? Would be very limited. And they're showing me like a little pea size, like they're like little teeny, like pinching their fingers together, squinting. And they're just like, yeah, you only see this much. So then you only aim for that much, and you only ask the universe for that much. And when you're thinking about your aspirations, you only think in this little vacuum. You don't realize there's this whole big vision out there. And they said a lot of us limit what we could ask for. And one of the best examples I think I have of this is like, there was this guy who was really wanting to manifest like their rent. And they were like, I really just need to pay my rent this month. I really just need to pay my rent this month. And I totally get that kind of thinking, because it comes out of like survival, right? And when we're in this type of society, like when you're like, I just need to make make ends meet, you're not thinking about thriving, you're just thinking about surviving, because of how your brain is operating. It's hard you're in fight, flight, freeze. And in that mode, you're probably more in like fight and flight than like anything. So it's hard for you to like even imagine like what would it be like to thrive. But it's important for you to try to push your brain into doing that, or move into it through meditations or daydreaming, because that can change how your brain is operating. And so when someone's like, how do I get my rent this month? I just got to make my rent this month. A lot of the time, then when they manifest is their rent. But they don't realize they could have asked for far more, or they could have aimed for far more. And it's the same thing with when people are trying to come up with creative solutions to things, they can only think about what they see. So in terms of larger systems and structures, which we are going to have large collective change with, I think we're already seeing right now, we're going to see a lot of opportunity to create the new. I think that we will, like, if we really want to create the new, though, we have to look outside of what we know. And a lot of people, or else we will recreate the wheel and we'll end up right back where we started. And this happens all the time for people. And so they're like, yes, that is exactly what's happening, is we're having a massive consciousness shift. And sometimes the shock and awe, while it's not always a fun thing to have everything just completely go away or be in a completely new place or be like, okay, what now? It allows your creative brain to turn on. So, and I just got chills. It allows you to shift up a level of consciousness if you really sink into it. And that's where our opportunities are right now. And we will have more of them. And so the other thing that they're saying is, so now once you go beyond this, and there are a lot of different techniques and ways that you can use to shift up and down levels of consciousness. They're showing meditation, movement, and daydreaming. And then they're showing art and creativity. And they said, now you're going to have to prioritize these things, and you're going to have to say, you know what, I'm tired of just surviving. I'm tired of just like barely like making it, or like emotionally just surviving. And you know what? I wonder if something would be better. And they're saying just the curiosity is going to shift you up a notch. Like, and they're like, yeah, like you don't have to try to gaslight yourself into like, I affirm that blah, blah, blah. And they're like, no, your brain can't make it there yet. And so what happens to a lot of people is they have friction with what they're trying to affirm. Or if they're doing scripting, they're showing me like the 3-6-9 method, and they're like, yeah. I mean, sure, it can change the brain. There is some science behind it, but they're like, but a lot of people can't naturally believe that. So one of the best things you can do is just start to daydream around it, because that can actually help. And they're saying not visualize. Visualizing is a forcing or a pushing. Sit down and say, hey, universe, what do you have in store for me? What do you have for me that I could possibly aim for or think about or create or experience or feel or be or do or have that I may not even be thinking to ask for? What else is possible? And they're like, it's going to be like your mind will be blown, especially if you're doing that practice consistently. They said even just for like a couple of weeks or a month, your brain and your nervous system will change rapidly. And they're like, so let yourself daydream, do some guided meditations online, like let yourself just kind of sink into that experience. And they said, keep it open, say, hey, guides, soul, Allah, Buddha, Krishna, Jesus. They're always like, we don't care what you call it. At something higher, like the highest love and consciousness, your future highest and best self is a great one to call on. Let it come in and fill you, but you got to get out of the way. Right? So if you're like, man, I just want things to be better, because a lot of times they're like, a lot of you guys have a lot of pain, and they're saying this with a lot of compassion. And they always like show me like a fist, and they'll hold their fist over their heart. And that's like the sign for like compassion from them. And they're showing me a big heart too, and they're doing the little heart hands, and like we see you guys, we get it. And so they're saying though, it's important for you guys to understand that, and we say this with so much love, you don't know what you don't know, and you guys set your bar way too low. And so we really want you guys to be open to the possibility that there may be so much that you don't know, that you don't even know to ask about. If you can stay in curious mode, you're going to shift a lot faster than trying to gaslight yourselves into it with a lot of visualizing and affirming and doing stuff that your brain can't get there from here. So they're saying, if you can be curious, like, I wonder, well, what if? Well, what if this is possible? Well, what if there's a better idea? And they're saying like And they said, try to be curious, because that is what's going to open you up. That's when things can get really good. They're showing the meditation, the curiosity. They're showing engaging in art, because it's a right-brained activity. It'll take you beyond what your left brain thinks it knows. Like your left brain really thinks like whatever it knows is it. That's it. That's all that exists, and it's wrong. They're like, it's very literally very wrong. And so this isn't just like it's your perception, it's your truth. No, scientifically it's wrong. This is the science, this is the physiology, like this is how it works. And so they're like, a lot of people don't like hearing that, but the more you work in your right brain, the more those two sides of your brain, they're showing like the connection. And they said, when Buddha talked about the middle way, this is what the middle way is. And they said, this is the way. So when you're blending the both and you're letting yourself rise into higher consciousness, what happens is you can become a channeler and a receiver and go beyond the mind. And so they're like, and this is what allows people to reach into higher realms where they're showing like astral travel. And they're showing these people are able to kind of transcend time and space. So they step out of like what they think they know, and they are much more intuitive. So they let go of space and time, and they can see, they're showing like beyond space, time, dimension, and reality. And they said, that's why meditation is so important, but it's not so that you exist up there. It's so that you can they're showing like someone like pulling wisdom, and they're showing the calm and the peace of existing in that place, because those people are like really calm. Like when I started meditating, I'd had to have, I felt like I had to go on long walks afterward, because I had to reacclimate to my body afterward. But they were really nice. It was like a nice combo. But I started manifesting really, 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 really quickly, and I started channeling really fast. And this allowed me to come up with new ideas and create. And it was like this chronic anxiety I'd used to have just completely moved out of the way. And all of a sudden I was like, I can't believe I had that much anxiety for that many years. And all of a sudden it's just not here anymore. Like it was like night and day. It even like shocked people that I knew because they weren't used to me being without this like anxiety. So it was really, really funny. But at the same time, it was kind of alarming. But also I was like, no, I just feel so good. I just feel so much better. And it was because my brain was changing. And so I became this like receiver. And they're saying, we want you to understand this is not like a singular experience. This is collectively possible. Like this is possible for everyone because you are all part of the one higher consciousness, the all that is, the source. So if you are all part of it, then you can all channel it, and your goal is to be more and more of that here on earth. And they're showing like the transcending of time and space isn't necessarily the goal on earth, but the bringing of that peace and the love that accompanies that transcending of time and space is. Because as you go up in the vibrational scale, you start to feel less and less of that friction like energy. So you're less rigid, you're less stuck on plans and timing and it's got to be this way and blah, blah, blah. And they said, all in all, what happens is you start to realize like the universe has a far better plan than I'm going to have. But when you need to know things out ahead, when you need to set your sights on something out ahead or put pen to paper and actually create something of a schedule or something of a routine, you will know and it'll be divinely guided and it will feel right. And it will work right and it'll work well. Versus when you're trying to make things happen and they're showing Gretchen Wiener's like trying to make fetch happen. It's not going to happen. Like, and so they're saying it's a complete difference. And they're showing what your goal is you want to like rise up in consciousness and you want to be finding that divine creativity where it's divinely guided versus imposing your will on it. And they said, so many people are trying to control the universe and that is not how it goes. And they said, you are seeing the repercussions of that, especially in the US right now and in a lot of other countries. And it's important that you understand that, like there are so many really wonderful people who are so much more creative and solution minded and solution oriented. And the more that you guys are tuning in and tapping in and meditating and taking intuitive action, it's not about not taking action or being passive. It's about taking the right intuitive actions guided by intuition, guided by your higher wisdom at the right times. And you will end up at the right place at the right time doing the right things. And so when you make your plans, they will feel good. They're not going to feel sticky. It's not going to feel rigid and controlling. It will feel like a breath of fresh air to have that loose plan or whatever. And they're showing me how much easier it is for people to manifest from that space. But the irony is that a lot of what they used to want to have, they start to let go of because they realize that it was very limited and that it wouldn't have been emotionally fulfilling. So what they do want to create completely changes and it becomes more of a conscious creation that works in the highest and best for themselves and all because their intention changes, because they recognize that they're deeply intrinsically connected to everything and everyone. So they're not trying to just create for me anymore. They're much more in a we consciousness. So they're showing me like the vibrational shift. They can see things from a bigger perspective and it's not just about me and mine anymore. It becomes about we and holding a larger vision. And they said, now on the topic of vision, when you receive visions, like you're, a psychic or medium or whatever, like Eric's over here talking like a psychic, he's like, it completely changes. And you start to receive visions. Visions are received. They're not created or forced by you. And so he's saying that's the difference between trying to visualize something and allowing yourself to have a vision. And he said, you all have a bigger vision. There's a collective bigger vision and your individual expression of that vision or your individual role in the larger co-creation of a higher, more idealistic world. And he said it is possible, but the key thing is that everyone needs to start to hold the higher vision. And this higher vision creates more of this like peace on earth and this lighter, higher vibration. And Eric said, truthfully, that's what really is the real world, the true world. And he said, it's important that you guys are holding it because the more of you are holding it, the more it becomes attainable. And he's saying this is received from divine mind, from source, from all that is. This is not created by your like willpower. It becomes more of a divinely guided, like he's saying, like a lot of you guys are having kind of an intervention right now, huh? And he's like, look at what happens with unconscious creating on earth, right? And he said, some of these people are creating all right, but not in the way they want, right? So he's saying, so we want you to kind of let go of the visualizations and say, hey, universe, hey, guides of love and truth and higher consciousness, highest self, Allah, Buddha, Krishna, Jesus, God, whatever you pray to, you show me. You tell me what's available. You show me what's available for the larger world, for the larger collective. Show me what's possible. Show me like where would you have me go? What would you have me do? What would you have me say and to whom? Because that true higher consciousness, the true voice of source of the creation of all that is, will never have you doing something that harms yourself or others. Never. Because that's not how source operates. It's a benevolent, it's not even a being, it's a thing. And it emanates, they're showing to and through all of us. And they said, can you guys even feel it just as you listen to this, how your consciousness, how your energy shifts? And they said, that's how important it is to allow yourselves to be receivers versus to be pushers and controllers and forcers. And a lot of times when you guys are in, like he's showing, like when we have fear driving decisions, we end up in that pushing, forcing, controlling energy. And then we feel like worse and worse. He's saying that this is why we have so many channelers on earth right now, though, but because we are shifting dimensions, and it's really important to continue to allow that shift to happen. And he said, the thing is, it's happening all the time. Like source is always rushing in all the time. Your key is not to resist it. And he said, the universe will rush right in. And so he's showing people feeling like, I mean, when you start to have this feeling, you're not just lighter and brighter in how you feel, but a lot of people actually, I've noticed they look younger and feel younger. Their skin glows. They don't even have to like use any facial product or anything. They're clearer minded. I've seen people even have, it's kind of crazy, but I've removed a fever from my own body, like in a split second, twice now. And I can't do it all the time. Eric's like, you can. They're calling me out. But I've actually had a fever lift out of my body when I had the flu a while back, and it did it like spontaneously. But it was because I was meditating and was shown grace and compassion, but as divine beings who came to work with me when I had the flu, and I had like, a fever of like 102, and I just came out of it, went for a walk around the block, and it was gone, and I didn't get any sicker. And it was crazy because my little guy had it at the same time. And I was like, I know this is the flu because I know what the flu feels like and looks like. And then they're showing me, I actually had a client a long time ago who she was lifting herself into higher consciousness all the time because she was doing a lot of energy work for herself and to other people. So she was constantly being a channel or a vessel. And that's what ultimately happens when you're in higher consciousness. It stops being about you and it starts being about your understanding and recognition of, I'm just the vessel for higher consciousness to come through, for love to come through and make itself manifest in the world. And you will have like there will be a reward for that. There will be prosperity in that. Like a lot of people actually end up in that type of stuff in a higher and better way than they ever could have imagined in the lower levels of consciousness, And so, but, I often see a lot of people manifest really cool things that they don't expect to manifest. And so one of my clients, she had been going gray and her gray hair just stopped growing. And and another one, I remember she had like her vision was starting to get like blurrier and her vision healed itself. And I was like, I wonder if this also has ties to like body inflammation. Like maybe there's a real physiological effect that can happen as well. But it was really, really cool. And I wanted to mention that part of it. And Eric's like, yeah. And he's like, it's really interesting too, because all of a sudden, all the problems you had, you realize there's an instant solution to them. And you start to know exactly what solutions to create and what your part is in them. The other piece he's saying is, now this is a larger co-creation too, but on a collaborative and communal and co-creative level, it's important that you guys join together. And he's showing the song Come Together right now. He's saying it is an important time, and he's showing people standing in a circle holding hands. He said there are so many people that are going to be divine beings, and he said all of you really are at your heart. He's showing like our essence, and he's saying but more and more people will have, like, we're past that tipping point into these other dimensions. Like it's happening no matter what. It's part of a larger evolution as well. And so he's saying a lot of people are going to have this dimensional shift and they're not going to know what's what and who's who. And that's why there are so many beings being brought to earth to support that. And he's showing like all these different channelers and psychics and mediums and people going through awakenings now and people who were way back when and why they're all here. And he's saying each one of you plays a really unique, specific part. And yes, a part, and always a part that's connected to the whole. It's like we're each threads in a larger tapestry, and every single one of us is important in the larger tapestry. And he's like, you ever had like a sweater that gets like one little snag in it, you know? And then it's like, you know, for a while you think it's going to be fine, but really quickly it starts to unravel everything else. And he said, that's how important each of you are. Just like every single one of you is a thread in the larger tapestry, and you're all deeply connected and part of this larger harmony that the universe is always trying to move through and to keep in balance. So he's showing how important it is to be okay with life creating through you and moving through you, because that's where you'll end up exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you need to do. And he said a lot of these channelers, that's why they look so light and bright. It's because they're not resisting that. They're letting it flow through them. They're not questioning everything and doubting everything. It's not that they never have doubts or questions. He's like, it's not that they don't have other emotions, right? Like they might have fear come up, they might have anxiety, but they're vessels for something else coming through. And that's what you all are. And he said, you're always channeling something. So the key thing is, what are you channeling? So let yourself channel in the higher ancestors. And he said, you will become more of who and what you truly are, which will allow you to co-create on a larger, much more conscious level. And he said, and at the same time, you're not going to always feel like you have to plan ahead and force and control and push, because everything is being done through you and for you and to you, and you're doing it for others. So you become this like vessel for endless energy to pour through you. And he's showing someone who is just like seamlessly moving. And he said, yeah, like you can have really cool spontaneous healing. You can have Satori experiences. You can have, he's showing people waking up at like 3 a.m. just feeling like, I don't know why, I just got to write, or I just got to paint. I just got to do this thing. I just got to do this thing. And he said, some people like they write. I remember at one point I started channeling and I had never published it or anything, but I've had like entire books come through me in a week. And they always told me it was so that you could practice opening your channel and staying in the energy of it. And it's like all of a sudden you're writing in this way and in this voice that you never even imagined. And they're saying, yeah, and people can do this with anything. Like Einstein and his wife did it. There's been tons of really cool women throughout history who have had really open channels, and sometimes it's only in specific areas. And then it kind of pops open and pops close and pops open and pops close. And for other people, it kind of stays more open. And so they're like, yeah, and you kind of like for each person, you'll know how it's meant to be. So Rebecca Searle, she wrote One Italian Summer and In 5 Years, which was a pretty well-known book several years back. And then she also wrote Expiration Dates, which I absolutely loved. And I remember as I was reading each one, I was like, this woman is channeling. I've got to read everything she's written. Because I was like, it's really rare that you come across someone who's writing fiction where you know that they're channeling or that they're connected to this like intuitive way of living or channeling things, and that they have such a unique way of bringing through those experiences through a fictional story and demonstrating them in such a beautiful way. So anyways, I was listening to this interview that she was doing on another podcast, and she had been talking about her writing process and how things just started to come through her, and how for her, it wasn't about controlling her channel. It was about her just working with the universe, and how she would schedule out or kind of write certain plot points for a book when she had a really good feeling about it. And she would just get up and start writing it. And so a lot of her books are written in like a matter of months, like pretty quickly. But if the idea is not flowing, then it's like, no, this isn't it. You know what I mean? Like it's really, really got to be flowing. It's got to feel right and fully be there. But how, even though she plans out some of the plot points, and she kind of has some knowing of what's going to happen, she never knows how the book is going to end, because she wants to leave some of the magic and some of that open for the channel for the universe to flow through, because she knows it's going to be even better than what she could have imagined. And so she kind of gets out of the way. And she was talking about writing as if it was a being, not something that she's just doing. And I was like, this is exactly what it's like channeling. Like you have an understanding of like, this thing I'm doing has its own consciousness and I'm the vessel for it. And it's my job to get out of the way of it and allow it to come to me and through me and to be created for others. And when we're creating something for others, then we open up on a much larger channel and become a much larger vessel if we're open to it. But we want to also be kind of like, having highest and best intentions. But yeah, she just mentioned how it flowed. All of her books flow through her very quickly when they're really, really meant to be put out there. And she writes really beautiful things that have so many great lessons about intuition and how things work really on the grander scale. And so it's a really, really powerful read. And maybe I'll do a whole podcast episode about intuitive books that I've read that I thought were really good and the lessons in them, if you guys want a lot of spoilers. Because I'm not going to be able to talk about it without spoilers being in there, and why they're so important. But so she talks about being that vessel. And so Eric's like, over here, Sam's doing a little curtsy and they're saying, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for letting us come through. And they're saying, but yeah, it really is a divine time and it's a time of great wisdom and great momentum. So it's important that you're tuning in and tuning up so you flow with that momentum. And they said, and then what begins to happen is the irony is that you're so present that you begin to see what's happening out ahead, like you just know, and you end up being perfectly prepared and in the right place at the right time. Or even if things are going on around you, like we can't control all of our circumstances, and so they're saying, but you always know like exactly where to go and what to do and what to say and to whom. So you're not as like controlled by your circumstances. And even though you may have any range of emotions, they keep saying you become much more of a problem solver, kind of a little bit more of that natural, like, okay, well, so this is going on and here's what my intuition says to do. So we're going to do that. And they said, but you're not in like survival mode. You're in much more of a thriving mode. So you become a little bit more, they said like, almost like a little bit more of a unique pathfinder for yourself and others. And they said the key thing with this is that you kind of have to leave some of your cultural conditioning. And this goes for a lot of people in a lot of different cultures. And they're saying though, but the beauty of it is that you know how to be in it, but not of it. Like you can resonate in the culture, but you're not like made from it. You understand it and have compassion toward it, but you're also a conscious creator of the change happening in the culture right here, right now, which I thought is a super cool thing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. I thought it was really neat. They're over here clapping for themselves and cheering for me. And I always tell them thank you afterward. I also wanted to mention again this week in my Patreon group, we have Manifest Fest. If you want to learn more from them and get some specific techniques for each level of conscious manifesting. And keep in mind, these are just mini lessons. So it's just like a starter. But I do think it'll be really interesting for some people, and for others, I think for some people, it's going to really hit home like, oh my God, yes. Okay. This makes so much sense. This is how I've already been thinking or what my gut has already said about this. So I think for some people, it's going to be that. And just keep in mind, it's just like a mini course on manifesting, and it's just included in the group if you choose to join us in my Patreon groups. And then what's super, super fun in terms of channeling, writing, auto writing, tapping into creativity, we are going to start our quarterly book club. So we're doing like 4 books a year. I wanted to keep it books that would be meaningful. And I also was like, we're already people have so much on their plates, and we already have some other really cool things going on in the group. Like they get behind the scenes videos and updates and channeled messages. They can ask questions that I can respond to and talk to each other in the comments and stuff. And so they're already getting so much in there. I didn't want to overwhelm more. But so we're doing our book club, and we're starting with The Artist's Way, which is a really, really fantastic book. I think a lot of people think it's a book for people who want to be writers, and it can help with that, but that's not actually what it is. And you'll understand once you start to get into it, or people that have worked with The Artist's Way before, they already kind of know what I'm saying, but it's not just for artists. Okay. It's not just for writers. There are a lot of cool things in there. And she even talks about creating like our own, like overcoming financial blocks and prosperity blocks. She talks about connecting to something higher and becoming the vessel, which I found a lot of it made a lot of sense with like when we're learning to auto write or learning to channel, learning to lean into our intuition. I think this book is going to help a lot of people a lot with that, because a lot of times it's like I think it's just going to be a good route to take. And so it's got 12 chapters. So it'll be exactly 12 weeks, one chapter per week. So pretty digestible. And the author also has some really cool like prompts and journaling prompts, and you get to do artist dates and morning pages, all of which we will discuss and share about in the group for book club. And so we're going to be starting on Saturday, February 1st, which also happens to be Imbolc. And it also happens to be just after, like a couple days after our January new moon in Aquarius. So we are in a perfect time frame with this new moon and everything going on. We're in a perfect time frame to be starting the new, for setting, higher intention, going beyond what we think is possible, starting to consciously create on another level. This is a good time period for expansion, especially on a collective level. But so I want that group to be a really wonderful, like, safe space and fun space for people to start to explore this stuff, especially for those of you going through your awakenings. No matter where you're at in them, it'll be a great place to go. So thank you guys so much for coming here today. Again, I am on Patreon, and we're the Intuitive Soul Collective LLC Patreon. I will link it up in the show notes. I'm also Spirit Speaker 25 everywhere that you can look, on TikTok and elsewhere. I do have my YouTube channels that are putting more and more on there, Substack, all that fun stuff. But the best place to find me is always going to be my website. It's intuitivesoulcollective.com, where I've got some fun updates and things like that going on. Also, just a side note, in the near future, I'm going to have a course on developing your psychic mediumship, and on shifting consciousness. A lot of the coursework is going to be channeled by my guides. I always trust them to channel through me and work through me. And I just become the vessel and move out of the way. And so it will be there to help people who are really wanting to strengthen their intuition, develop their channeling ability, and become mediums. And then I'm also going to throw in a little bonus area for people who are actually wanting to turn this into their work, and they're trying to figure out, how do I do readings? How do I overcome my fear of being seen or getting it wrong in a reading? How do I set up different things in my business, etc.? There will be a little bonus section in there for people who are interested in that. Otherwise, yeah, I think this was a fun one today. I hope that this was helpful for everyone. I hope to see you guys in the Manifest Fest group. And just keep in mind, if you listen to this episode later and you're like, oh man, it's already over, it'll always be in the group. So you can always go, like, join us in the group and then search for it in there, even a year or two from now, and you'll be able to find it, because it'll still be in there. So you'll still be able to find all that content and do the exercises and stuff if you want. Same thing with book club. Everything will be left in the group for later. So if you're like, oh, I'm running late, or, I'm joining this late and that book's over, you can still hop on it. So don't even worry about that and kind of do it on your own. But I hope this was helpful for you guys today. And thank you all so much.